Good morning, dear children. Come back to online classes. Today we are going to see the remaining chapter of history, chapter number 4. Today's our first topic is what happened to the shifting cultivators. As we have studied in the previous class about the shifting cultivation, the shifting cultivators did not have a fixed home. They shift from one place to another. The British were uncomfortable with these groups who moved about. They wanted groups to settle down and become peasant cultivators. Settled peasants were easier to control and administer than people who were always on the move. The British also wanted a regular income for the state. So, they introduced land settlements, that is, they measured the land, defined the rights of each individual to that land, and fixed the revenue demand of the state. So, peasants were declared landowners, others tenants. In chapter 2, we have already learned that the tenants were to pay rent to the landowner, who in turn paid revenue to the state. The British effort to settle jhum cultivation was not very successful. So British made many effort to settle jhum cultivators, but it was not successful. Settle plough cultivation is not easy in areas where water is scarce and soil is dry. So settle plough cultivation can't be done properly where water is less and the soil is dry. It needed water and the soil should be fertile. In fact, jhum cultivators who looked to plough cultivation often suffered since their fields did not produce good yields. So, the jhum cultivators in northeast India insisted on continuing with their traditional practice, that is, shifting cultivation. Facing widespread protests, the British had to ultimately allow them the right to carry on shifting cultivation in some parts of the forest. So, seeing to the protest, the British also allowed them to right to carry on shifting cultivation in some parts of the forest. Then comes forest laws and their impact. The life of people, that is tribal group, as we have seen, was directly connected to the forest because they depend on the forest for their livelihood. They collect fruits, flowers, leaves, roots, etc. So, changes in forest laws had a considerable effect on tribal lives. So, the forest laws has affected the tribal lives. The British extended their control over all forests and declared that forests were state property. Some forests were classified as reserve forest, for they produced timber which the British wanted. So, in reserve forests, nobody is allowed to move freely, practice jhum cultivation, collect fruits, or hunt animals. How were jhum cultivators to survive in such a situation? It was very difficult. Many were therefore forced to move to other areas in search of work and livelihood. So, when they saw that these laws has been implemented by the British, the jhum cultivator could not survive in this situation and they were forced to move to other areas in search of work and livelihood. But once the British stopped the tribal people from living inside forests, they faced a problem. From where would the forest department get its labor to cut trees for railway sleepers and to transport logs? So when British stopped the tribal people to go inside the forest and live inside the forest, they faced many problems. They are not getting labor to cut trees for railway sleepers and to transport logs. Railway sleepers here means wooden planks laid across railway tracks. They hold the tracks in position. Officials came up with a solution. They decided that they would give Zoom cultivators small patches of land in the forest and allow them to cultivate these on the condition that those who lived in the villages would have to provide labor to the forest department and look after the forest. So, in many regions, the forest department established forest villages to ensure a regular supply of cheap labor. Many tribal groups reacted against the colonial forest laws. They disobeyed the new rules, continued with practices that were declared illegal, and at times rose in open rebellion. Such was the revolt of Sangram Sangama in 1906 in Assam and the forest satyagraha of the 1930s in the central province. The problem with trade. During the 19th century, the tribal groups found that traders and money lenders were coming into the forest more often, wanting to buy forest produce, offering cash loans, and asking them to work for wages. It took tribal groups some time to understand the consequences of what was happening. So during 19th century, tribal groups what they found that traders and money lenders were coming into the forest. They want to buy forest produce by offering cash loans and asking them to work for wages. It took tribal groups some time to understand the consequences of what was happening. Let us consider the case of the silk rovers. In the 18th century, Indian silk was in demand in European market. The fine quality of Indian silk was highly valued and exports from India increased rapidly. As the market expanded, East India Company officials tried to encourage silk production to meet the growing demand. So the silk was in great demand. The East India Company officials they have tried to encourage this silk production to meet their demand. Hazaribagh in present day Jharkhand was an area where the Santals reared cocoons. Cocoons here means silky covering made by silkworm. The traders dealing in silk sent in their agents who gave loans to the tribal people and collected the cocoons. So the growers were paid rupees 3 to 4 for 1,000 cocoons. These were then exported to Bardwan or Gaya, where they were sold at 5 times the price. The middlemen, so called because they arranged deals between the exporters and silk growers, made huge profits. The silk growers earned very little. Understandably, many tribal groups saw the market and traders as their main enemies. So, here, as we have read that the traders sent their agents to collect the cocoons from the growers, where the growers were paid rupees 3 to rupees 4 for 1,000 cocoons. These cocoons were exported to Gaya, where these cocoons were sold at 5 times the price. So in this transaction, the middleman who arranged deals between the exporter and silk growers made profits. The silk growers earned very little here. Many tribal groups saw the market and the traders as their main enemies. Now, next is the search of work. The plight of the tribals who had to go far away from their homes in search of work was even worse. From the late 19th century, tea plantations started coming up and mining became an important industry. Tribals were recruited in large numbers to work the tea plantation of Assam and the coal mines of Jharkhand. They were recruited through contractors who paid them miserably low wages and prevented them from returning home. So the tribal people who go far away from their homes to work, their condition was very worse. In the late 19th century, tea plantations and minings became an important tea plantations started coming up and mining became important industry. Tribals were recruited in a large number in these tea plantations and coal mines. They were recruited through contractors and paid very low wages and prevented them from returning to their home. A closer look. Through the 19th and 20th century, tribal groups in different parts of the country rebelled against the changes in laws. The reconstruction on their practices, the new taxes they had to pay, and the exploitation by traders and moneylenders. The Kos rebelled in 1831 to 32. Santhals rose in revolt in 1855. The Bastar rebellion in central India broke out in 1910 and the Warli revolt in Maharashtra in 1940. The movement that Birsa led was one such movement. About Birsa, we have seen in the starting of this chapter where he lived and from which tribal group he is. So, about his movement, what movement he has started, we will see in the next class. Thank you, children.